among policymakers and think tanks alike. And the latest to even get a lot more people concerned is the decision by the opposition MPP to ask presidential aspirants to pay 4 million Ghana cedi Party Development Fund. That's in addition to about 500,000 cedis filing fee, among other costs that are associated with being part of the political system. The problem is also compounded by the fact that for a long time there is no transparency when it comes to political financing in Ghana. That is what we want to talk about tonight and see the way forward as regards recommendations. Hello, good evening and welcome to Agenda. My name is Beatrice Adu. And tonight, like I just told you, we're delving into the issue of political financing and whether or not even the sources of funding that politicians and their political parties get are in the interests of the country. How do we probe all of those? I do have on the panel with me Professor Beatrice Adu. He's senior lecturer and newly elected member of parliament for Tamale Central. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda.
Thank you so much, Beatrice.
Of course, I have on my left side as well, Madam Gloria Oforibuedu. She's a private legal practitioner. Good evening to you as well, ma'am. Thank you again for joining us on Agenda.
Welcome.
Of course, we'll be joined for a video call by Madam Mariada. She's Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, as well as Dr. Kojo Asante, who is Director for Policy Engagement and Partnerships at the CDD Ghana. Remember that we're streaming live on 3FM 92.7. Send us your comments and we'll read them back to you. Stay with us. And you're still here on Agenda on TV3. Tonight, we are looking into political parties financing, or political financing, as you would call it. And I did say that we do have on the panel with us Professor Beatrice Adu, who is Senior Lecturer, MP-elect, Tamale Central, Madam Gloria Oforibuedu, private legal practitioner. We're joined via video call as well by Dr. Kojo Asante, who is Director for Policy Engagement and Partnership at the CDD Ghana, as well as Madam Mary Ada, who is with the Executive Director, Ghana Integrity Initiative, which is the local branch of Transparency International. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for joining us on Agenda tonight. I want to start with you, Dr. Kojo Asante, because just last month we had the Executive Director of your organization, the CDD, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, saying that the cost of running a presidential campaign in Ghana is estimated to be around $200 million. And that figure actually in 2021 was about $100 million. And I would want you to break down really the cost component for us. But I want to also quickly go through a survey that the CDD did in 2004. Just some pointers here for us to put this whole thing in context. Some of the things you found from the survey you did, both elite and the masses, was that about 51% of people talked about or complained about a lack of adequate funding, corruption, which represented about 47%, internal party conflict representing about 32%. We still do have that now, and lack of adequate personnel, 28%. And again, 70% responding that political parties would perform their roles more effectively if they were well resourced. Personal funds of party leaders, 21%, and membership dues, about 15%. All of them cited. If you can break down for us, especially the latest figure coming from Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, and why it seems to have made politics in Ghana very expensive.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, and good evening to all your viewers and your listeners, and also good evening to fellow panelists. So first of all, let me put Professor Prempeh's, I think, statement in context. I think he was making the point that when we did the study on illicit financing of party activity and politics, in 2021, we had estimated the money or the cost of running for elections for the presidential candidate at 100 million. And I think when he was speaking, I think quite recently this year, he was making the point that given the kinds of additional expenditure that we are seeing, we should be close to doubling that amount. So that was not based on any sort of new study that had been done. I think he was making the point that that the expenditure continues to grow. Now, in terms of like cost component, you just take the idea that a candidate that is running for president, particularly among the two main political parties, even if you were purchasing pickups for each constituency, that's, I don't know what pickups cost these days. It could be between $35,000–$40,000 or something to that effect, and multiply that by 275 constituencies. You definitely be hitting around 12 billion or more already just for that, and that's outside of how many times you go around the country to campaign. And remember, if you are opposition, you are probably campaigning, after the second year after a general election. So maybe for the next 2-3 years, mostly like 2 years, you will be campaigning straight out before you even get to the election. If, for example, you take the two main sort of MPP candidates, aspirants, who have been going since the last election. So you take Honorable Kennedy Japan, you take Dr. Baumia, who went through primaries. Last must have been 2023 or so. But before then, they needed to sponsor even polling station executives all the way through to constituency executives, regional executives, national executives, to be able to, influence what kind of electoral college that will eventually select the flag bearer of the party. And that's a lot of money to do that, and to go through all of that, do the party primaries, go and fight a general election, and then just less than a year later, you are having to do another internal party primaries, and then if one of them become or whoever becomes the flag bearer would have to be campaigning for 3 years. So I mean, we are completely getting out of anybody that comes out of that kind of electoral cost. Anybody that's elected or selected from that kind of electoral environment, that person owes a lot of people, and to then expect that this person then would be able to fight corruption, try to deal with procurement abuses, try to all the things that anybody that is supporting that person would be demanding that they get recompense for their investment in the aspirant. So we are talking a lot of money. For the last election, for example, we almost turned it into a US style negative advertising, right? You just were constantly, every 30 minutes you are getting an advert, and then you get a counter advert. And the monies that our parties have spent on media alone, which is gone completely up, and then now on digital media is huge. So
do you have the data on how much was
think,
spent, for instance, as you wrap up your preliminary thought?
No, we don't have. So I mean, those are things that we continue. We and Mary can speak to that we were trying to collect some data on abuse of incumbency, and then also media expenditure. But we haven't gone sort of distill the data yet. But it's something that we plan to get some more handle on. But I mean, it's just to make the point that if in 2021 we are talking about 100 million for the presidency and 4 million CDs, or over $600,000 for an MP, come 2024, 2025, we definitely have gone into another level.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Doc, but I want to come to you, Madam Gloria, for everybody, because I know that you tried 3 times to contest the Abuakwa South parliamentary seat on the ticket of the MPP, 2016, 2020, and then 2024 as well. Are you able to tell us some of the...
No, 208. I contested 208, the primaries.
But at least you tried 3 times.
And then 2020, I was disqualified, so I couldn't try. And then 2024.
Yes. Yeah. What were the major financial demands on you at the time?
I'll say that during the campaign, the delegates became like family. So some of them who were briefed, we helped them to buy coffins for the dearly departed. So that's one. And then payments of school fees and general family and household bills.
How massive was that? Because you're looking at a whole constituency.
Yes, we are looking at a relationship with the delegates. So it was quite a lot. Every day you get all these calls saying hello to you, and then once in a while they chip in and ask for some support. But I guess my colleague here, who has recently won elections for Tamale
Central.
Congratulations, Honorable.
Thank you.
Can give you some information. Because I'm a bit still now.
Yes,
Because
but would you
my
say-
last time was 2024.
Which is just last year.
January 2024. So I've answered you.
Yes,
Yeah.
but would you say that perhaps the financial bit influenced the outcome of that primary eventually?
I think in Ghana, as of now, the highest bidder always wins. I mean, the last elections we saw the primaries, the highest bidder always won.
So you're indirectly
Across party
saying
lines.
that it might have influenced your inability to go through.
It does. Now that is the norm. Now that is the norm.
So I'm coming to you, Professor Ali. Again, congratulations to you. Before the primary, of course, the circumstances were different for you, but there was that payment of, I mean, the forms, 5,000 CDs, I believe, 40,000 filing fee. That's in addition to perhaps monies that you have to give to the grassroots people for mobilization and filing at the Electoral Commission. What for you were the financial dynamics as well?
Thank you so much. Good evening to your viewers, and good evening to the people of Tamale Central, my constituency. I think, first of all, I want to start with the background that democracy is very expensive. It's an expensive enterprise, one. But two, politics and money is like Siamese twins. They are conjoined at a very critical point that if you are not careful and you want to separate them, you may undermine the entire democratic processes. But if you leave it to continue maybe in a certain direction, it could also cause a lot of harm. Now, politics is expensive in the sense that, specifically democratic or electoral politics, in the sense that the average voter is increasingly becoming more expensive to reach. And every election have cost dynamics or implications, including the fact that in our electoral politics now, we have to provide security. Provision of security for elections is very expensive.
Who has to provide that?
Definitely the state.
Okay.
Two, we build capacity of electoral officers that we use. And you know our electoral commission mostly relies so much on what? Part-time or temporary workers to be able to do that. We also remunerate those who do the work. And we are now in a digital world where digital infrastructure is also required. So all these things largely makes elections technically more expensive and our democracy. However, if we look at elections and money from this perspective, it is a necessary evil, and the bills usually come as part of government budget to run it. But when we look at money or monetary influence or inducement becoming the political tender to occupying a political office, then it becomes a serious, difficult challenge on the other hand. So the distinction I want to make is the fact that elections or democracy as a system of government is expensive, and a lot of resources are required to be able to run them. But the other bit of it is that where monetary inducement or influence or people's pockets becomes the political tender for them to occupy political office, it now becomes an offense and a crime, and a very difficult challenge that we must deal with. Over the years, the triggers of monetization in our politics, in the second way that I have defined it,
Which is actually the concern of a lot of people.
Fantastic. Is the fact that it's a demand and supply thing, to be honest with you. In most cases, maybe the electorates will demand it, and the politician or the office seeker is often willing to also supply.
You have gone through the system yourself. How bad is it in terms of the electorates themselves demanding? And you also, of course, your circumstances are different, willingly wanting to give because you want to be elected as the member of parliament for an area.
I think the issue of monetization in our politics has been a canker that has been with us for a very long time, not specifically on my campaign. And if you look at the work that the CDD and the Westminster Foundation for Democracy did, it points to just what my colleague has referred to. But I think the idea has to do with the fact that it is an issue of demand and supply, one, but also two, one of the serious drivers of this monetization has to do with what? Our delegate system. You know, we run a very narrow elections before the major elections. And people assume that because the delegate system is a very few group of kingmakers, it is very difficult for you to be able to pay your way out of that particular election and then win, especially in highly competitive constituencies where you know that the election is just the primaries. So when you are contesting, say, on the ticket of the MPP, say, in Ashanti region, or the ticket of the NDC, say, in Volta region, the actual election is the primaries and not the major elections. So you just have to transcend that. But there's also the idea that we have technically an election overload in our body politic, the electoral cycle overload. Like Kojo mentioned, you start with branch elections, you move to constituency level elections, you move to regional level elections. So even the primaries, because if I have an intention of contesting for a flag bearership in the political party, my electoral veto starts with who becomes what? The polling station officer or the branch executive of my party. And it rises up to who becomes what? The ward coordinator or the constituency executives, up to who becomes what? The regional executive and the national executives, because they all have a role to play.
So all of them will have to be sorted financially. That's what you're saying?
Not in all cases, but in majority of cases, the issue has to do with the fact that you want to win. And some of the delegates may demand that. And if you have your offer, where that becomes the norm of the game, it becomes very difficult for successful democracy to triumph.
I want to ask you this before I get the preliminary thought as well of Madam Mariada, and then we'll move on to really what we need to do to fix the problem. You talked about the fact that we have a delegate system that seems to kind of force people to behave in a particular way, i.e. being corrupt to pay their way out of the... in order to become what they want to be politically. But we also have electoral college in US, so it's not just Ghana that is, has that kind of privileged individuals who are going to select somebody.
I didn't say the delegate systems leads to people being corrupt. I said the delegate systems creates the impression that if you are able to win, especially in a highly competitive elections where the major election is the delegate or the primaries, then people see that it is very easy for you to be able to pay just a few group of people, if that's what they demand and you can afford, to be able to win. But the idea is that some political parties in this country even propose the reform of what? Expanding the electoral college system because they think the fewer the merrier. Or because they are very few, it's very easy thinking that you can pay them off. If it's a very large board of people, it becomes very costly to be able to do that. And you either stop doing it or you have to spend so much money to be able to do it. So there have been reforms in the past that seeks to expand the delegate system, even take out completely the delegate system, and allow the entire membership of the political party to vote in the primaries. And then subsequently, when you win, then you go and contest the elections. The challenges that has often associated with reforms like that is the fact that it makes the cost of elections very, very expensive, especially where it is in a competitive election. The first amount of spending you have to do is to try to win the primaries. And if the primaries is not a restrictive kind of processes like the delegate system, it means you are paying all your party members who are in good standing and are qualified to vote. Then after that, you now go and contest the main elections and you have to pay the entire constituency members again. So it doubles the cost of running elections. That has been the bane of reforms like that has been pushed in the past. But the understanding is also that if the delegate system is very narrow, it makes sense that people are able to pay them if they want to do that, to be able to emerge winners for the as parliamentary candidate and eventually contest the elections. So it's a kind of two-way game. The cost. So do we have to accept that politicians are willing to pay twice the cost of winning primaries and also national elections? If they do that, how are they going to pay back the cost that they have incurred? And that is tied to the issue of governance system and the kind of corrupt practices that usually emerges in a democracy. So there's a kind of relationship between the amount of money that is spent in winning a political position and then the likely practices that people who have eventually emerge victorious are likely going to engage in to be able to offset the debt that they had incurred.
And I will come back to you on that because I want to get the thoughts of Mariada, but I'm not sure you answered the question about how bad the situation is, because prior to you becoming a politician, and you are still lecturing actually, you have a lot of knowledge in this field as well. How bad is it? I just wanted to get your...
It is bad, Beatrice. It is very bad.
Madam Mariada, let me get your thoughts so far on what you yourself, Transparency International, Ghana Integrity Initiative, you've been able to gather. And Dr. Kojo Asante was earlier saying that the two institutions were even trying to find out how much it costs politicians and political parties, even in the last election alone, just on media adverts.
Thank you very much, Beatrice, and good evening to your viewers and listeners across the country, and also to say good evening to the other panelists, and congratulations to Prof. I would say that quantifying it, these are averages, as Kojo has mentioned, and we have tried in various elections to document abuse of state resources. Also, in 2024, we added the element of trying to document the cost elements, looking at the various instruments that are used for elections, the logistics as well. So we're looking at the various paraphernalia, including the T-shirts and others, which were documented, and also campaign events and rallies. It is still work in progress, and as Kojo has indicated, we stalled because of some challenges, but it's work that we are going to finish, because this is a topic that is topical for Ghana and also very important for the international stage. It has become a discussion that we cannot run away from, listening to Kojo, listening to Prof and Auntie Gloria. We need to all do something about this, and we need to do it as quickly as possible. Because the fight against corruption, I believe, without a doubt at all, is incumbent on resolving the issue around political financing, particularly where monies come from, to ensure the prosecution of the various campaigns by the political parties and also by the various candidates. Transparency International has, in this regard, done a lot of extensive work collating information from across the globe. And I can say authoritatively that many countries in Africa and also across the globe have similar challenges, but maybe varying in their manifestation. And so there is the development of a recommendation or recommendations that we believe all states should pay attention to when it comes to the fight against corruption, particularly tackling this monster of campaign financing. We cannot belabor this point whatsoever. The linkage has been established. It is so very clear. And so I was thinking the way Prof was trying to get out of the discussion on how bad, but he came to it that it is very bad. I think you push him to agree that it is very bad. And perhaps maybe we should be asking Prof how much he used in contesting his election. And I think he also mentioned the fact that it depends on the constituency where one is coming from, where we have strongholds and anybody standing would not have to do much to win. But yes, still there is the element of a lot of money going into the process. The question we should be asking ourselves is, for instance, take me, Mary, as the example. If I had the opportunity to stand for elections, a civil society person who does not have much money in my account, if I am prosecuting such an agenda where I have to be buying coffees for constituents and paying school fees and hospital fees, as Auntie Gloria has indicated, where am I getting that money from? People would have to give me. And the challenge is the fact that we do not have a clear regime in place to ensure that there is accountability for what people are giving us. And so we see a regime where the Electoral Commission is supposed to hold these parties accountable, but not the candidates. So the gap remains there. Candidates take all the money from illicit and licit sources to prosecute various campaigns. Again, we see a regime where, because we do not have a timeline within which we prosecute our campaigns, immediately after elections, we start another election. So they need to continually fuel the wheels of elections is there. And as I talk, I believe the MPP has already started. They are already thinking about electing somebody to continue with the process in January.
Yes.
And so we are a country which is election biased. We are thinking about how we win them. Then the issue of lack of accountability is cruelly manifested because we take monies from every space. Kojo will tell you about the issues around putting together a bill and a legislation to ensure that we do this work. And some of the justifications that have come for receiving illicit money. I remember at a point somebody asked, how do I know where the money is coming from if I am somewhere soliciting funding and somebody gives me money? How do I know it's coming from illicit sources like Galamsey and also the drug trade and also illicit financial flows? How do I know that? These are some of the issues that we need to deal with. Very critical challenges that this country must be able to deal with. These challenges continue to suffocate our electoral process, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. So you need more money to be able to prosecute the agenda, to be able to win. And so when you win, then as Prof has indicated, you go around following your party to give you contracts when you are not a contractor, where you also have to sell, and then you continue to engage in illicit activity to be able to fund your remaining in either parliament or your party remaining in power. So there are so many of these, and the lack of transparency around all this makes it even more murkier. And I believe that the citizen as well, our role has also been compounded by the fact that there is so much poverty in the system, and we have seen this as an opportunity to also harvest during these campaigning processes. And they will tell you, I was on another space where somebody was saying the fact that we are talking about expanding electoral colleges and promoting that, that will not be the resolution at all, because if you expand the process, it means you need to find more money to fuel that agenda.
Indeed.
And so, and indeed, if you say everybody, then it means you need to give more roads to people, you need to give more TV sets and buy more coffins and pay more school fees and take more people to hospital, and which is not tenable.
Yes,
which is not tenable at all for us.
Prof would answer that question on how much he spent. But let me ask you this before I come back to him, and then I'll come back to Dr. Kojo Asante. I mean, what you're talking about in terms of transparency, a lot of people indeed have been calling for transparency in our political financing. And we see that happen in US, for instance, where you have open secrets, so you know how much Donald Trump and the other competitors even received ahead of that election that brought him back to power. And just right in France, in Europe, you've seen a former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, also sentenced to 5 years in jail. He's expected to go to jail next week because of that Muammar Gaddafi kind of arrangement. What kind of systems, from where you say, do you believe would work for us in ensuring that we have some sort of transparency and accountability?
I believe the Political Parties Act, which requires that people can give, is not clear enough. The space within giving is not clear for us, and so we believe that this should be strengthened. And when I say giving, if you give, like in the American and other systems, if you are giving 10 cedis, it will be reflected in a system where everybody would know how much is being given. In our case, there is no particular limitation of the giving, and as it is also compounded by it says Ghanaians would give. What about those instances where we have corporates, and corporate vehicles can also give? So what about those instances where the corporates are in Ghana but not Ghanaian? And these are where the bigger chunks of the funding comes from. So we need a vehicle in place that helps us to be able to, at every time, be able to document and also share with the people of Ghana how much, for instance, the NDC is making, how much Professor Alidu is making when it comes to soliciting for funding to prosecute his campaign. This should be very visible, and the Electoral Commission or another body that is superintending over the issues of promoting transparency should be allowing us to see on a daily basis. It is critical that at this point, the people who want to lead us must be willing and ready and available to be public officers. And public officers should not have secrets. You shouldn't have secrets that you do not want us to know. And besides, if somebody is giving you money, why don't you want us to know who it is that is giving you the money and how much it is that person is giving you? I remember during the Obama days, each Tesla and each CD was accounted for. Then at the end of the day, the accountability of the parties and also of the members of parliament or candidates should be one critical component we all seek and ask for. And we must demand to the extent that they give to us. When you go to the Electoral Commission to ask for information, they give you information that shows the parties consistently declare, and I mean the two major parties declare, but the declaration is limited. It is just for funds that are legitimately put in their accounts. So you don't see how much goes to the individuals, and this must also be within the remit of the law, so that we ask how much were the t-shirts the person donated. If they were 1,000 and each is 40 cedis, we should be able to quantify this and show. And whoever is superintending over this must also ensure that the people of Ghana are informed at every point in time. It is critical that we do this.
Indeed,
if we believe that we want to be public officers who serve the interests of this nation.
I'm coming back to you, Madam Gloria Foribuedu. I mean, I'm sure you heard the thoughts there of Madam Mary Ada, and the fact that, for instance, we are asking where the sources of funding really are for politicians. And earlier, when I was doing my introduction, I talked about this whole conversation coming up again because of how much, for instance, the MPP is asking presidential aspirants to pay 4 million cedis in party development fund, among others. What's your own thought first on that, and how you think we can ensure accountable transparency?
I remember I trained with the 50+1 group in the US on elections, campaign, and fundraising strategies. So I have a small book on that, which I used when I was contesting for assembly elections. I did assembly. I was an elected assemblyman first for Denta. Now, when it comes to elections, the purpose for most persons who stand for elections is to improve the livelihood of people they represent. And so, in order not to, in order not to limit people who have competences to raise funds to contest elections, there are opportunities given for them to reach out to families, friends, acquaintances, people in their circles to support them. I did that for the assembly and for all the elections I tried to contest. Now, when you look at our laws, the, the People's Representation Law, the PNDC, it's a PNDC law, and also the Political Parties Act of 2000. There are various guidelines and regulations. With the Political Parties Act 2000, there are even provisions for parties to declare their assets and also to account to the Electoral Commission. I believe that it would be, in order to, not be suspicious and not to think they are illicit, or not to imagine or not to speculate, it would be important that the Electoral Commission's holds party accountable to these assets declaration and also accountability. Unfortunately, in areas like the UK and even the US, where government also supports a lot of party activity to sustain democracy, in Ghana, I don't see that happening much. I know that
a few people have called for that.
Some time ago, government gave ladder cars to some parties. I don't know, I stand to be corrected if it's still going on. And so the UGMs and all had some ladder cars. But now I don't know. But if government were to play a dominant role in sponsoring political parties and political activity, that could also be a good guideline for accountability and the assets declaration and compliance.
Is that what you're asking for?
That's what I'm recommending.
But I'm not sure you answered the bit about the 4 million cedis as proposed to the presidential aspirants within the MPP. What do you think about that, looking at the sources?
I'll say that when it comes to, unfortunately, government is not much involved. But when it comes to these, electoral operations, we realize that the candidates really get involved with financing. For example, in 2023, remember the then candidate, Mahama, now our president, offered 40 cedis for travel and transport, TNT, for all delegates. I don't know how much or how many delegates we have, unless we go by the polling station of polling stations in Ghana, about 40,975 as of 2024. So at that time, all of them were going to benefit from TNT of 40.
I'm asking about the party.
I'm telling you that it happens all the time.
I'm asking about the party asking presidential aspirants
I'm saying that
to pay
it's
4
always
million.
done because there's always some form of legitimate concern. For example, I gave you the example of candidate Mahama offering 40 cedis for travel and transport to all the delegates.
No,
because
so
some delegates...
Forgive me, Madam Glory Furibodi. So these are two different things. I'm asking, for instance, MPP...
I'm answering your question.
I don't think I'm getting the answer.
Are you asking the question about MPP alone
No.
political parties?
Because you are part of the MPP, I only ask you...
I'm here. I'm just telling you that the answer is yes, because all political parties have, because government is not involved, they always have to find some way of helping with legitimate means. And I've given you the example of then candidate JDM offering 40 cedis, only 40 cedis for TNT for all delegates. You can imagine the quantum if you calculate 40,975 polling stations in the country.
I think that is quite.
I'm saying that. So I look at the issue of TNT, then the issue of what?
No.
Travel and transport, the issue of feeding, the issue of security costs, which you just... Why are you saying no? You asked me a question.
No, forgive me. But what I'm trying to say is that...
you don't want me to answer.
You're not answering the question. What I'm asking is that this money, which Professor Ali Disedo also alluded to,
exactly,
is that you give... These are the candidates who are given to the delegate. I'm asking about the party asking...
In the case of the MPP, the party demands that each candidate...
I know, and I'm saying that there are always legitimate reasons, because government is not the bigger financier of political parties and political activity in Ghana. There are always legitimate reasons why parties solicit for funds.
So it's okay in this context?
So I'm saying that, I'm not saying it's okay, or I'm giving you the reasons. And I'm giving...
Of Michael Quay's write-up on this 4 million thing, it appeared on the daily graphic.
I would love to read it. Yeah. So I'm saying that there are always reasons. And the reasons is not only limited to MPP or NDC. You can ask the other parties too. And the issue of security costs, as my honorable member said, that's so important. The issue of TNC is important. Don't laugh, because some people take it very seriously, that if they are coming to a center from their remote community to vote for a party, they should be given some travel and transport. Then the issue of, feeding. Then the issue of accommodation. We can go on and on if we look at the different parties and their budgets. So these are all legitimate reasons why they solicit for funds. Yeah.
I want to come to you, Dr. Kojo Asante, because in July this year, and Madam Meriada earlier talked about it, the need for us, and even Madam Glory Foribwedu as well, the need for us to look at the systems that allow these things to happen.
The law
And in July, we had the OSP also coming out to say that there was a need for us to have a serious reforms to Ghana's political financing laws. Instead of holding political parties accountable only, we should also hold individuals accountable as well. Where do you stand on this, and how you think we can at least start to implement some of these things to help deal with the canker we have right now? Doc, are you still on the line with us?
Hello.
Yes, Doc, we can hear you.
Hello. Yeah, as you can see from the work we've been doing since 2017, we've been working on this, I mean, for me, this is an existential threat. If you look at the 2018 report, which was on the 2016 elections, that compared the 2012 elections to 2016 elections, we showed an almost 60% increase from 2012 to 2016. And even at that point, we were estimating the cost of standing for primaries and then the election for MPs at $85,000. That excluded nurturing the constituency, and Professor Aludi will probably tell you that you don't just wake up that you are going to contest for primaries. You have to nurture the constituency for a couple of years.
Yes.
And that is also a lot of money, And then you move from 2016. By the time we are in 2021, you're talking about close to $600,000. For people who are spending $4 million, or so on just becoming an MP. How much do you get as an MP? And you did mention, I think it was Mary that mentioned, that when you become an MP, servicing the seat itself is a lot of money. Yeah. Before building another war chest for retaining the seat in the next round. Even the member of parliament cannot spend time actually doing any work in parliament, legislation, because we are looking for money all the time. So we have been working with the working group for a number of years now, with practitioners and so on, who are also very, very concerned about the problem, because one of the effects, and this is one of the really dangerous, effects to our multi-party democracy, is that it's leading to the capture of the party by people who are able to raise money. And our 2021 report also showed very clearly that there's illicit financing, all types of people trying to sponsor politicians, and then later on trying to find ways that they can get something out of politicians, which really threatens the state. So what we have come, the conclusion we have come to is that we need a real comprehensive legislation on political financing. And we use the term political financing because it's broader than campaign financing. It deals with party financing and deals with campaign financing as well. And we've already drafted a model law that we are trying to engage the Attorney General to look at, so that we can regulate, this sector. Because without that, you cannot really talk about multi-party democracy. I mean, because I really talk about that democracies are expensive, and particularly electoral democracy. But the point is that a lot of the expenditure is a waste of resources. We don't need a lot of that expenditure, but people have to do it because their competitors are also doing it. And in a competitive environment, if somebody else is doing it and is allowed to do it, and you don't do it, you're probably going to lose. So that has to be regulated all the way from internal party processes to public elections. We regulate doctors.
And Doc, if you can be wrapping up for me, forgive me, so that I can get the final word of others.
So I want to make the point that it's not just about the public elections that we should care about. Those people who emerge out of the party processes to become ministers and get appointed to run the state, the processes that they go through is very important. It has to be sacrosanct. The same way we would regulate doctors and nurses and accountants and so on, because we are trying to prevent the harm that they will cause the public. It's the same way we have to regulate potential public officers who will come from the parties.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Doc. Madam Mary Ada, in 30 seconds, we've run out of time. If you're able to tell us really your thoughts, final word, recommendations.
I believe there's a lot to be done, and it takes the will of the people. The agents of states would want to take advantage of the system. We need the reforms Kojo has proposed, but we need civic action, collective action to change the situation, because citizens are clearly also becoming very complicit in this agenda. We need to ensure that we have laws that clearly define campaign periods for us. We need the legislation that clearly defines who should and who can make contributions to our party. We need regimes that speak to transparency and why the person who is standing for public office must necessarily give account of every pesewa they are receiving. And we need some very punitive action to be taken against those who do not comply with the set regimes that are currently in place and those which we are also proposing. I think with that, we would all be making some very significant progress.
Indeed.
And for me, I believe cutting the campaign period to 6 months would be a very ideal way of helping. And I know the parties and candidates would also support us to get this done. Thank you very much.
Let me get your thoughts, Madam Oglory.
Yes, as I mentioned, we have the Political Parties Act 2000, and then we also have the People's Representation Law. So these have to be looked at, and if there are necessary amendments, then we can also look at it. But there should also be opportunities for more government involvement in the funding of political parties.
Indeed. Professor Ali Dusedu, how much you spent on your final word?
So before I answer that, I agree that this is a very serious issue. It transcends, I think the cost comes at 3 levels: running for primaries, running for major elections, and then after primaries, governance. It all is all very costly. So I do believe that when we say it's costly, we are looking at its impact on the day-to-day governance, in the electoral process, on the day-to-day governance. And we all agree as panelists that it undermines our democratic processes, inclusivity, but also it creates a whole lot of mistrust in the public. It incentivizes illicit financing of our political parties, and then it even leads to excluding the grassroots people who want to contest but don't have money. Moving forward, what should we do? I also agree that there should be a regulated state sponsorship of our political parties, transparent regulatory systems. In the United States, for example, there's a cap for what an individual. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Ali Dusedu, for joining us. Prince Nanaya Oyok says, people dash pick up cars in Yoko. We are watching keenly. Thank you very much for sending us your messages. We are unable to read all of them, but we are very grateful that you stayed with us. Madam Mary Ada, Executive Director, Ghana Integrity Initiative, the local chapter of Transparency International. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda. Also, Professor Ali Dusedu as well, a Senior Lecturer and MP-elect Tamale Central. Madam Gloria Foribwedu, thank you as well for joining us. And of course, Dr. Kojo Asante, Director for Policy Engagement and Partnership at the CDD Ghana. My name is Beatrice Adu. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Join us again next week. Have a good evening.